Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching my video. Gordon Causey coming live, unscripted, on the 15th day of October 2023. It's now 2:16 a.m. I started right at 2:15. Rare that I started exactly the time I say I will, but tonight I did. Regular viewers will know that I normally start off with giving my dog a treat, but I did that ahead of time, and I put her away in her crate for now to give me some peace. And I wanted to talk some more about the conflict, the ongoing conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, between Israel and Hamas, Hezbollah in the north, and Lebanon. But before I do, the usual thank you to everyone who has subscribed, for the likes, the comments. I got a number of comments on one I did a few nights ago talking about this very issue. Hopefully this one will be a little more focused. I'm not going to be flipping back and forth and trying to read news articles while talking. When it comes to this whole conflict, there seems to be a lot more divide in terms of people supporting either the Israelis or the Palestinians. You've probably seen there have been a number of protests all over the world: London, Paris, Toronto, New York City, with a chant of "Free Palestine." Has been we've seen a divide. There are individuals who are adamantly supportive of Israel, individuals who are equally vociferous in their support of the Palestinian cause. In terms of my own point of view, if you're looking for me to tell you support one or support the other, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to tell anyone what side to take in this conflict. I try and stick to the middle and try and understand things from both perspectives. But what I do find curious is that, going back 3.5, 4 years, over the past 3-4 years, we've had a number of issues foisted on us, if you will. And typically there has been one prescribed narrative, one point of view. I often say on this channel that the media, our government officials, quite often that we're, especially through the media, that we're programmed what to believe, what to think, and even how to feel about things. When it came to COVID, we were programmed to view COVID as this incredibly dangerous and deadly pathogen. And so anything and everything that could be done to combat it was on the table, and you had to support whatever measures were imposed. It didn't matter how inane they were, how contradictory they were. You'll remember, in my jurisdiction, Ontario, Canada, if you wanted to film someone getting a haircut for a TV show or a Netflix streaming, whatever, a Netflix streaming series, you could film someone getting a haircut, but you couldn't actually go and get a haircut. A small independent little hardware store would have to be closed, but Home Depot could have hundreds of people in it. But people went along, by and large, people went along with it because they were programmed to be deathly afraid. Then when the jabs rolled out, again, the programming was incredibly safe, incredibly effective, long-lasting, robust, sterilizing immunity to infection. It'll stop transmission. This will bring the end to COVID, et cetera, et cetera. And if you expressed a view outside of that paradigm, it wouldn't matter if you were one of the world's leading experts in vaccinology or immunology, virology, or any other. No matter if you've addressed world conferences all over the place as a keynote speaker, if your view didn't line up with the prescribed narrative, well, then you would be labeled, that individual would be labeled as spreading misinformation, disinformation. And so again, the good people. If you were a good person, you believed that anything and everything to stop COVID must be done, and that the jabs are incredibly safe and effective. Then we go on to the transgender debate, and if you're a good person, you agree that gender is simply a societal construct, and that everything must be done to support transgender individuals who don't identify with the gender that they were born with. And, we've got to be kind and compassionate. And if that means prescribing puberty blockers with their dangerous side effects, like reducing bone density in kids and whatever, well, that's fine. Or surgeries to remove healthy tissue, whatever it takes. And that was the good view. And then finally, last one I'll bring up is Ukraine and Russia. Obviously, everyone started waving Ukrainian flags at their houses or on their social media profiles. Ukraine were the good guys, Russians were the bad guys. No need to look into anything deep. No need to look back at the history or anything. Just cut and dried. Ukraine good, Russia bad. And typically, what I found with those, I guess that's 4 issues. With those 4 issues, there was a divide. If someone had the temerity to disagree, if someone had the unmitigated gall to not be deadly afraid of COVID, or if they decided against getting the vaccine, if they push back again, if they maintain that there are 2 genders, male and female, or dared question the notion that Ukraine is all good and Russia is all bad. Typically, those pushing back against the prescribed narrative would be described as at least right of center, on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, Republican conservative type. And those who would buy into everything, more left-leaning liberal Democrat in the United States, to use that term. But when it comes to this conflict between Israel and Palestine, I don't see there as being as pervasive a prescribed narrative. It depends on the media that you listen to. If you're if you're a Fox News type consumer, it's very pro-Israel, and it tends to be pro-Israel as well in the other media, but they'll allow the NBCs, ABCs, CBSs, CNNs of the world will provide some balance, and they will present something of the Palestinian view. And it's an issue that tends to break down again on this left-wing, right-wing dynamic. Right-wing tends to be more supportive of Israel, the left-wing more supportive of the Palestinian cause. And unfortunately, it's hard to pick a side in this. It's hard to decide, because the issue is so incredibly complex. I mean, obviously, we're going back millennia. We can go back thousands of years, 2,000-3,000 years. Currently, there is a post that's getting shared around a lot on Instagram, Facebook, and similar type platforms, social media platforms. And what it does is it shows a map, and it's labeled Palestine, written from south to north as Palestine. And it says this is a map issued by the National Geographic, showing that there was never a place called Israel. And to me, this shows a woeful ignorance of simple history. First of all, that map that the National Geographic apparently published was not a map that they issued. It was actually issued by a United Nations committee that had been struck. This committee's their job. They were trying to sort out what to do with this area of land, which at that point in history, in 1947, was referred to as British mandated or British Mandate Palestine. That was the name of the territory. It wasn't a country. It was a territory, basically. It was a region that was administered by the British. They had gained control of it after World War One, when the Allied forces, Britain and her allies, had defeated both the Austria-Hungarian Empire, allied with Germany, and the Ottoman Empire. And when Britain won, they gained control of this region. Call a term I like to use is the Levant, because if you use Israel, that denotes possibly support for the Israeli cause. If you call it Palestine, then you're on the side of the Palestinians. If you call it the Levant, which is bigger than just this region, but it works for me. This region of the Levant is incredibly contentious, the history goes back so far. Now, I don't want to go back to biblical times, but this notion of Zionism comes up a lot. And Zionism is a movement that started, I don't know when actually it started, but it was in the late 1800s, so late in the 19th century, that Zionism as a formal political movement really gained prominence. That's when things really started to move forward. That's when the bodies like the World Jewish Congress and such really began to push this notion of the reestablishment of a homeland in the biblical promised land in the Levant. They view, for Jews, it's regarded as their homeland. And their movement, that Zionist movement, got a big boost in I think the year was 1917, and that was the year that a declaration was signed by the British Parliament called the Balfour Declaration. You can read up on it, Balfour, Balfour Declaration. And ostensibly what the Balfour Declaration stated was that the British Parliament would support this idea of creating a Jewish nation state in the area that would later become British mandated Palestine after World War One was over. Fast forward to 1947, 48, after World War II has ended. And now what's happened is the Holocaust has come into the consciousness of the world. The atrocities at Birkenau, at Dachau, at Auschwitz, and the genocide, the murder, the execution, the atrocities of World War II, 6 million Jews. And now the move, the call for a Jewish homeland in this Levant region ramped up exponentially. And as I understand it, the World Jewish Congress called on every able-bodied Jew who had been displaced during the war to go to the Levant, to go to this area of British mandated Palestine, and there to demand the creation of a Jewish nation state. And wisely, I think the British and the UN, they recognized that having a Jewish nation state in what is now Israel, that it was a recipe for conflict, for major discord between the existing Arab population and the Jews who were moving into the region. And actually, there were proposals put forward to establish a Jewish homeland in places like Uganda or in Madagascar. But the World Jewish Congress and Zionist bodies were adamant it had to be in what was then British mandated Palestine. No other place on earth could be a Jewish nation state. It had to be in the promised land, the biblical or Torah promised land. And so what happened was proposals were put forward. That map that I mentioned, many will have seen it, I'm sure. That was published, not issued by National Geographic. They simply published a map that had been put out by a UN committee trying to solve this problem. And the problem was that every proposal that was put forward was rejected by the Palestinians or the Arabs living in that region, and by what was called at the time the Arab League, the Arab nations surrounding it, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria. They were all in opposition to this notion of creating a Jewish nation state in that area of British mandated Palestine. So they basically vetoed or nixed any proposal put forward. Was no, 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 no. And this is simply history. And so what happened in May 14th, 1948, the Jewish people living in what was still then British mandated Palestine, they unilaterally on their own declared independence in similar fashion, in a way, to the United States making its declaration of independence on July 4th, 1776. They just announced to the world, we are now an independent nation. And as I understand it, their initial boundaries that they laid out were basically what had been proposed by the UN in that map that gets shared around. They said, here are our borders, this is Israel, and the other territories, that's for I'll call it the indigenous Arab population, although I'm using the word indigenous in a more academic sense. They're the people who've been living there for a couple thousand years. And again, to be clear, because when you want to stick to the middle, the Jewish presence in this area of the Levant had been ongoing from AD 70, from the time of the Roman conquest. If you ever want to watch a great mini-series on TV, it's probably back in the 80s or 90s. It was called Masada, which is a Jewish fortress. That was the last holdout in AD 70 in this revolt. The Jews revolted against the Roman occupation, and they were wiped out. But even from that time forward, there was always a Jewish presence, and it waxed and waned. It went, a few tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. As we got to the end of World War II, it swelled into the hundreds of thousands. And after the declaration of Israel as a nation state in 1948, May 14th, then it got up in around 1 million. But ultimately, as I mentioned in my video of a couple nights ago, ultimately, I do not see any potential for a peaceful solution to this, aside from one side gaining total victory and one side suffering total defeat, because the hatreds that exist are ancestral and they go back generations. And when you look at the Palestinian population, 1948 wasn't that long ago. We're talking about 75 years ago. So someone who's 85 today, they might very well know there are individuals who can drive by the house that they were born into and grew up in until they were 10, when that land was then seized and made a part of Israel, and they were expelled. There was an expulsion of Arabs, of Palestinians, from lands that were designated for the Jews. And likewise, and it's not just going, you don't have to go back as far as 75 years, because what has happened since then is that areas, lands that had been designated as Palestinian have been settled. The Palestinians who have lived in those areas have seen themselves expelled, and then they've seen Jewish settlers move in. You hear about these settlements in the West Bank, and that's what they're talking about. So it doesn't even have to be 75 years ago. These settlements have been ongoing for decades. And why I'm convinced, and this is opinion, that Israel is doing this intentionally, because the simple fact of the matter is that to this day, there's a large contingent of the Arab world and within the Palestinians themselves who view the notion that they want Israel wiped off the map. They want Israel gone. They do not recognize 1948, May 14th. That is a black mark in history, when they view their land as having been stolen from them, and they want it back. And they will stop at nothing. Anyone proposing this so-called two-state solution, I think, is being woefully naive, because there's no path forward in a two-state solution, because the Arabs and the Palestinians too many of them, I'm not saying everyone, but too many of them refuse to accept the notion that Israel's right to exist there in this region, in the region that we now call Israel. They do not think they have the right to exist there. Maybe in Madagascar, maybe in Uganda, but not there. And of course, the flip side of that is that the Israelis absolutely 100% assert their right to exist in the biblical promised land. So how are you ever going to find a solution? So what I think you're going to see happen, there's talk that within hours, I would guess, the Israeli Defense Force, IDF, issued a warning to Palestinians living in the northern part of the Gaza Strip to evacuate, and they were given 24 hours. I don't know exactly when that timeline started, and I don't know exactly when it ends. And the IDF has not said precisely when any assault would begin, but they have said that they are going to attack by land, sea, and air. And they've urged all Palestinians in that northern half of the Gaza Strip to evacuate south. However, Hamas, which is the governing authority in Gaza, is urging Palestinians to remain, to stay where they are. And it's one of those situations where, that familiar bromide, this is not going to end well. And as I mentioned in my last video on this topic, I think I've done 2 now. This is the 3rd one. My fear is dominoes start to fall, because Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in northern Lebanon are both said to be supported financially, militarily, are advised by Iran. And Iran, in turn, is allied with Russia. Russia, in turn, has signed a no-limits partnership with the Chinese. Vladimir Putin recently met with North Korea's Kim Jong-il, and Putin has promised to reciprocate with a visit to North Korea. It almost gets biblical. And I'm going to end off my video with a reading. Those who aren't aware, I am a Christian. I profess Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. I believe I profess both the sufficiency and the authority of the Bible. So I'm going to read something. People talk about Ezekiel 38 and 39, and obviously Revelation, Daniel. And these are these end time prophecies, this eschatology. And in broad scopes, what is believed will happen at the end of times is that the world's armies will descend and there will be a major battle at Armageddon. And it's going to center around Israel. Interestingly, I'm getting my Bible, one of them anyway. Interestingly, the Psalms, this Psalm, 83rd Psalm, the Psalms are said to date from the era of King David, when Israel, at that time it would have been two kingdoms, the southern kingdom of Judah, the northern kingdom of Israel, but they were united at this time. And Israel was, it was a time of peace and prosperity. Their, if you want to call it, their empire had extended to its widest range. And yet here's what we have in the 83rd Psalm. I am reading from the Revised Standard Version. A Psalm of Asaph. O God, do not keep silence. Do not hold thy peace, or be still, O God. For lo, thy enemies are in tumult. Those who hate thee have raised their heads. They lay crafty plans against thy people. They consult together against thy protected ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. Yea, they conspire with one accord against thee. They make a covenant. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, Philistia and the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined them, and they are the strong arm of the children of Lot. So to them, as thou didst to Midian, and to Sisera and Jabin at the river Kishon, who were destroyed at Endor, who became dung for the ground, make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, and their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us take possession for ourselves of the pastures of God. O my God, make them like whirling dust, like chaff before the wind. As fire consumes the forest, as the flame sets the mountains ablaze, so do thou pursue them with thy tempest and terrify them with thy hurricane. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Let them be put to shame and dismayed forever. Let them perish in disgrace. Let them know that thou alone, whose name is the Lord, are the most high over all the earth. Thus ends the reading of the word. Thanks be to God. There are individuals who will say, well, the Edomites are this ones, and the Ishmaelites are that ones, and the Assyrians are this ones. I don't get into that. I can look at it from 100 miles up and get a good enough scope on it to say Israel's surrounded. In today's terms, we have Lebanon to the north, we have Egypt to the southwest, Jordan off to the side. Iran is somewhat removed. Iran, when I look at my globe, if you're going from Iran, you have to go through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, or through Iraq, or in Syria. Iran has something of a buffer between themselves and Israel, but Israel's immediately bordered, by Jordan, by Egypt, by Syria. Those are the three big ones all around them. And I'll remind you again that Israel declared itself unilaterally an independent state on May 14th, 1948. One day later, 5 nations of the Arab League invaded. So there's no good end to this. Someone's going to have total victory. Someone's going to have total defeat. And which side? Getting back to the question that's the title of this video, which side, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys? In war, there are no good guys. They're only losers, and especially in a war like this. The only thing I can pray to end it off is to say, thy will be done. If you have a comment, please leave it below. If you want to like, share, subscribe. I can't believe I'm up to 140 something, which is unbelievable for a miserable, pathetic channel like this, unmonetized. But I find that the nightly news, the media, they want to program you. They want to tell you what to think, what to believe, how to feel. And I think it's more important that people decide that for themselves by taking in all the information. But I find, sadly, that a lot of people now in today's world, I think it's just a case of laziness. People want to have an opinion. They want to be seen as being on the right side, but they don't want to take the time to investigate and look at the different perspectives. And so they just want someone to tell me what to think. Russia or Ukraine, who's the good guy? Oh, Russia's the bad guy, Ukraine's the good guy? Thank you. End of story. I don't need to know anymore. Oh, COVID's a deadly, dangerous pathogen. I need to wear a mask and do everything I can and support them, hammering the small business sector and rewarding the corporate big bucks, the big boys. Great. Bob's your uncle. I'm there. Put some stickers on the floor. Yay, keep me safe. Whatever you tell me to think, I'll think. And that's not a healthy situation. And my miserable little channel, I kind of shaking my fist at the cloud, if you will. And I appreciate those who, give me a like, give me a share, give me a subscribe. Who knows what can come of things. God bless, and we'll talk to you in a few nights, maybe tomorrow.